Dun, 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 dun. I'm getting used to the music again. We're getting back in the groove.
We are getting back.
Like two in a row, Penny. This is awesome.
I know, and God willing, a few more days.
I think we'll be good. We're gonna have a very let's not ruin the surprise. We're gonna have a very special episode coming up. We'll that's right. We'll promote that as we go along. But in the meantime, we are two cantors that have tried to walk into a bar, but it's just not a good idea now. So we are going virtual as we've been doing since this whole thing started. I am Cantor Matt Axelrod of Scotch Plains, New Jersey, and I am here with the cantankerous, because you told me that I had to use that from last time, and I remembered the cantankerous
Cantor Penny Myers from Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York.
Go Bills!
Buffalo's finest. It is great to be with you. We have a wonderful episode planned. We have a special guest star that will be joining us soon. In the meantime, we are just off of our virtual this year, midwinter conference. We got together, at least on Zoom, with all of our friends and colleagues and connected with them. And it was a wonderful, informative, enriching time.
I think there were more East Coast folks this year than ever.
Well, it's the same thing that we're seeing in all of our, various communities, congregations, that as soon as we went virtual and provided that as an option, we got way more participation because people, it's easier, it's more convenient, of course, geographically. I mean, East Coasters don't have to hop a flight. There's no expense. You just log on. And
I don't know about you, Matt, but I've had to take 3 flights to get out to Palm Springs.
From Buffalo, I mean, how fast can that squirrel run on the wheel?
I just want to hop on the Buffalo Bills private airplane and, fly with them.
I think you could arrange that. So listen, we're two cantors that have walked into a bar, but I feel like I'm letting you down. I'm letting our audience down because this morning I am going purely morning beverage this morning.
I have nothing.
So this is
feels weird.
This is awful. This is terrible.
I know. I gotta tell you, you need that coffee to kick in because you're a little flatlined right now. God forbid.
Oh! All right. I'll my vim and verve is gone. I'll rally. I promise. We're because we have to accommodate the schedule of our guest star. We're a little off of our timing this morning. Usually we do this, during happy hour or cocktail hour, which is
all the time.
Any hour except for 11:53 to 12:02.
That's right. Actually, it's really, I gotta say, it's really fun to bring in our guest for today. Matt and I just did a presentation at our Cantor conference, otherwise known as Cantor Camp in my house. And we spoke about this very podcast.
That's right. We were asked, we have become such go-to experts around the entire country for cantors who do a podcast that they sought us out.
Well,
I don't know whether to be scared or what.
You know what? It's not even just the country, Matt. You have to give it.
It's the world. We are the world's leading experts in podcasting. It's not just the country. It's Canada too.
It is. It's Canada, and we have folks from Israel.
Right.
Okay, now you got serious.
Wow, I'm just like, we are the international, ladies and gentlemen, we're the international podcasting experts.
Wait, maybe there is an international podcasting community.
Right. So one of the things we're going to be talking about today is, and this kind of harkens back to a previous episode we did, who knows when, about the changing role of being a cantor, where it was, where we're going, how things have changed, how things are going to evolve likely in the future. And we're seeing, a certain trend, I think, in congregational life, and it has to do with economics. It has to do with if congregations, what and who they are able to support. And it has to do with what the public wants, what the Jews want. All right, and we are now ready to welcome our very special guest. I'm going to let her in to our special podcast, and then we will go from there. Give us a thumbs up if
Yay.
we're online.
We
Awesome.
are
Okay. We would
online.
like
It's great
to
to hear you.
officially welcome our friend, colleague, Rabbi, Cantor, Mensch extraordinaire, Rabbi Cantor Hillary Chorny.
Woohoo!
It's wonderful to see you. We've seen a lot of you over the past week because for people who are listening, you know that Penny and I have been speaking about our annual midwinter conference and that it had to be virtual this year. And our friend Hillary Chorny is one of the main organizers, the compelling force behind, the driving force behind the midwinter conference all week. And she was faced with unbelievable challenges because it was not in person. It had to be, we had to create a meaningful experience for virtual, and it was just a wonderful experience all around. So welcome, glad you were with us. So I'm going to do a very tiny, short introduction, and then I'm going to let you introduce yourself maybe a little bit more. But Rabbi Cantor Hillary Chorny is the cantor of Temple Beth Am in Los Angeles. Please note that she has done us a great service this morning by getting up really early because she is on Pacific time and it is still morning out here on the East Coast. Thank you, Hillary. So Hillary, unmute yourself. What's the matter with you? You can't mute yourself when you're our guest. Look, you made Penny do a spit. Worst guest ever. She just muted herself and waved to us the whole time.
I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old in the background somewhere in
okay.
this house. So I've just
slice of
sparing you background noise.
All good, because this is, you know, what we do. It's, you know, in a moment.
It's better than a bar, honestly. I think it's
nothing is better than a bar.
Nothing is better than a bar.
Hillary, Penny and I are talking this podcast about, we're going into like the changing role of cantors. We've spoken about this, Penny and I have spoken about this in previous episodes, the changing, evolving role of cantor, what congregations want, what temples are able to maintain, our changing set of responsibilities. And we wanted to talk to you because you are one of the growing number of our colleagues who are rabbi and cantor. And we're just wondering, we'd like you to talk a little bit about your journey and how this happened. Were you a cantor first and then you got smicha rabbi, versus how did you come about your two titles?
You're a hybrid.
Right.
I'm a hybrid, yeah. I am one of the very few, if not the only, I think I'm the only JTS graduate, JTS graduate who dually got cantorial and rabbinical investiture and ordination, right? So I received my cantorial investiture and my rabbinic ordination at the same time from JTS. And as far as I know, I'm the only person who ever did that at the same time. So there are plenty of JTS cantors who are also JTS rabbis, right? Both their investiture and ordination come from JTS, but I don't think anyone who received it at the same time. I don't recommend it, right? I mean, I'm so glad I did what I did.
Did you have to create? Did you have to create your own? Did you have to create your own program and course of study? Did they work with you? Did they discourage you to do it?
Well, that was challenging. So I started in cantorial school when I was a public high school kid. I was a Hebrew school kid, grew up a student of Eliza Pomerantz-Borough out on the West Coast. I grew up a West Coast conservative Jew. And when I made my way out east, I started studying politics, but I was teaching in Hebrew school like any broke college student who was a student of Eliza Pomerantz-Borough and knew how to be a good B'nai Mitzvah tutor and make good money, and found I was really loving that more than the stuff that I was doing in the classroom. And that's the really short version of the story, is that I decided I wanted that to be vocation as opposed to avocation. And so I still love politics on the side, not as much this week as most weeks, but I
picked a good week for that. Wow.
Right. But I generally speaking, I wanted to make doing Jewish my job. So I wanted to go to cantorial school, and I eventually did that. And music was my minor, jazz was my minor. And I, at the time, Henry Rosenblum was the dean. I pursued cantorial school. I went to, at the time, the first year of cantorial school in Israel. And by the time I came back to JTS, what I wanted to do was to choose rabbinics as my master's degree. But at the time, also, there was kind of a dissolution. I don't remember exactly what happened, but there was sort of a dissolution of um, academic degrees at JTS. Like I couldn't really do what I wanted to do in terms of academic degrees, but I wanted to still study rabbinics. Like that's what I wanted to do was I wanted more time in the Beit Midrash. Having left Israel, I still wanted to be a cantor. I still wanted to practice as a cantor, but I just wanted more time doing rabbinics, both historically in the Beit Midrash. I wanted practically still to be a cantor, but I wanted more time studying what the rabbis study, being in classrooms with the rabbinical professors and teachers. And it was difficult to convince the I had a hard time convincing the folks in the rabbinical school
Mhm.
that was valuable, worthy. And I think it was partially the very same politics that you can imagine about the cantorate, which is that still it's really challenging to not undervalue the cantorate by sticking the title rabbi in front of it, right? Without just saying, I just want a rabbinic education. But what I eventually, I think, convinced, and I give a great deal of credit to Rabbi Danny Nevins, who still yields beautifully to Nancy Abramson, to Cantor Nancy Abramson, my amazing teacher for the second half of my cantorial education. I think he really understood that in the end, right? That cantorial education and rabbinic education are so differentiated. And I think he really understood. I hope that's ultimately what happened, that he really understood that was my plea, that I wanted to have a complete rabbinic education also. And so that permits me ultimately to practice in such a differentiated way out there in the field, that I have that whole rabbinic education also behind me. But ultimately, I did want to be trained to do everything that a cantor was trained to do.
So do you think that there's an increasing blurring of the lines now? Because you were very specific about differentiated, that it's very specific, but do you think that there's a risk of a blurring of the lines between what a rabbi does and what a cantor does? And as you know, there already is. I mean, even under the old system, we still, cantors are dual clergy with the rabbis, whether that's recognized or not, or if people understand that. But do you think that, especially because Hillary, you are listed as the cantor of your shul, but
Yeah.
with your title, Rabbi Hillary Chorny. So do you
Yes.
think that adds to any ambiguity or blurring of any lines or anything for people?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that I think that that's like a great question for people who are deans of the clergy education system,
Yeah.
because I think that the blurring happens with congregants and congregationally, and the way that things get set up within every different congregation. In my congregation, the way that things are set up, that we have a senior rabbi
Mhm.
and we have an assistant rabbi position. And since I've been there for 7 years, there have actually been 3 people in that seat. We had Rabbi Ari Lucas in that seat for a while. We had an interim rabbi, Rabbi Matt Shapiro, who now is actually our director of youth learning and engagement, so he's still on our staff. And now we have Rabbi Rebecca Schatz, who is a graduate of Indiana University's music program and is an incredible basically music director and conductor within Hazimir. She's an amazing alum and she's a great
So there's
conductor
a lot
and
of crossover in portfolios
correct,
anyway. That
correct, exactly. She's an extraordinary musician in her own right. Um, there's a lot of crossover. That said, there there was no consideration in any contractual anything uh, as I've talked with my leadership about changing titles, changing
Mhm.
organizational structure, anything along those lines, uh, about moving who I am in the system, right? The congregation still wants a cantor to be a cantor in their congregation. The congregation understands what it means for somebody to hold that role. Um, there are very few things that I do that only a rabbi would do.
Like what?
And uh, teaching conversion candidates. I get asked this question all the time, and it's very hard for me to come up with an answer. I teach conversion candidates, and I see them through and actually conduct the conversions. And I think there are very few cantors. I don't know any cantors out there who oversee to the degree and then sit on the Bate Din, and uh, and go through, and then I oversee at the mikvahs.
Yeah.
I sit as one of the primary chairs of the ritual committee at my synagogue, and then oversee the budget for it. I think there are very, very few aspects of the congregation that are so primarily rabbinic that I do, and therefore I wield that in such a way where I say, see, look at all the things cantors do and can do. So it's actually a very powerful thing to say, this is what a cantor can be and can do. I happen to have a rabbinic toolbox and education as well.
So I find that really.
Go ahead, Penny.
Yeah, no, I find that really compelling, just because when you said how many cantors out there, and I've had my own conversion students and have seen them through on the Bate Din and through mikvah, and I think that I was also the only clergy who was overseeing our ritual committee in my shul, and so I find there's a lot of parallels here, except I don't have smicha, but you're right. It becomes a teachable moment that, what we do on the bima with our voices is such a very small part of our portfolios of what we can do.
Yes.
And just even during this past week, Matt and I were lamenting. No, we were just talking about being at midwinter.
Is that a synonym for drinking?
Yes. And speaking about our podcasting presentation with your Bert. And I said to Matt earlier before you joined us, I said, I wonder, how do you know which title to use first? And hearing him call you Rabbi Cantor, and it was, like Reverend Doctor or whatnot. And I'm curious to know, I mean, is it more hierarchical that the rabbi title goes first?
Exactly what I was going to ask. Like, what? Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, we shouldn't be, but we're obsessed with labels and titles.
We are,
and because it defines us to the laity in a very quick way.
Yes.
So I noticed, Hillary, that you're Rabbi Hillary Chorny, and then listed as Cantor.
Yeah.
But,
So that choice is it's both a fraught choice, but such a purposeful choice for me, because for me, it's the position of cantor that I want to lift up in the congregation. So the smicha, so to speak, which isn't even technically real smicha, that's its own fraught story, because JTS and smicha and that whole thing, right? If you think cantors have an issue around investiture, ask rabbis and the idea of smicha. It's a whole thing. Cantors and being ordained versus invested. For me, it's that rabbi is a title that I earned, but cantor is a position in the organization that I hold, like my senior rabbi holds the position in the organization. He is the senior rabbi of the organization, and I hold the cantor role in my organization. And I am so proud to hold that role. And it's a terminal role in my field. The fact that I hold that 7 years out of school is crazy in an organization like I do, and I hold that with pride. And so for me, saying Rabbi Hillary Cantor, Rabbi Hillary Chorny, Cantor, it makes sense. It also it's just crazy making for a communications team, to be honest, like in terms of practicality. The rabbi, because we have so many rabbis on our team, it makes a lot of sense for them to say the rabbis, or like,
it's like title soup, there's just Correct. A lot out there, right?
Alphabet soup. What's your I mean, I as I said, I know that when we presented this past week, earlier this week, with your amazing congregant, Bert, do all of your congregants call you Rabbi Cantor, or do people just stick with the rabbi title? Some people just stick with the Cantor.
And this is when I have to ask, Are you rabbi or ranter?
Oh no, it's Chazarai.
Oh right, that's another.
The oldest child of my senior rabbi has been wanting to make Razan work since the beginning, which is
Razan.
adorable.
You're a
I
California Razan.
I'm a
Oh my
California
God.
Razan.
California.
Oh,
Yeah.
cute.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be here all
Oh,
week.
that's a nice reference. I That's funny. I
Just threw it
That is
out there.
funny.
Now I'm
The
stuck on
train
California
got
Rising.
derailed at the station.
Now I can't stop
This is what
picturing it.
this is
There
what I
you go,
do. This is what I
Hillary.
do
This
here.
is our podcast.
This is it.
I
Welcome
should
to our
be
world.
drinking. Why am I not drinking more
I
at
will
this
drink
hour?
for you.
Next time.
Let's
Thank
not-
you. No, I'll have more coffee. I My congregants often call me, as so many people often call you, my congregants call me Cantor. And the reason they say Cantor, or the Cantor, is because we have, at last count, like 63 rabbis as members of our congregation, no exaggeration.
Yeah.
It just is the makeup of our congregation out here.
Does it stress you
That's
out
amazing.
having so many?
Yes. Yes.
So, do you think that this is now a growing trend, or that it will be necessitated that for economic and employment reasons that so many of our colleagues or incoming colleagues will want to pursue a dual title, with one of the many schools and academies that they're available to do that, again, there'll be sort of a contraction of the field where people are just dual rabbis and cantors, and they just get jobs in synagogues functioning as in whatever role. And then as a result, do you think that there's a lessening of a dilution of the distinction of our field?
Okay, Matt, it's early for her in the morning in California. That's a long-winded question.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's a great question.
She said it was a good question, Penny.
She did say it was a good question. All
No,
right, fine, you
I'm
win.
kicking you out of
It's
the
a good
Zoom
question.
room and
I didn't say I had a good answer. We'll find out. You guys edit, right? Okay, so we'll
Only
find
when
out.
I swear.
Maybe we'll see.
yeah, I find
Do a
out.
buzzer. I want Matt to
Buzzer.
have a buzzer for your swearing. I want, I wanted like a bullfrog or something. Here's what I think. I'm not an economist, but I do listen to economic podcasts.
Good.
And I think that I think I understand that generally speaking, there's a bubble that will burst someday, that collecting extra degrees, titles, accolades, that there's a demand in a lot of fields that are either C-level fields or just professional fields in general, that there is still kind of a resume demand of a climb and a climb and a climb in not just our field, in nonprofits in general, education especially. There's just a demand to collect degrees and titles in order to outshine the next person, and then the next person and the next person. I don't think it's necessarily going to be rabbinics, but I think that it is going to be something. So I think that there's going to be, I think the Cantor and the Cantor hyphen, I don't think that's going away.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
we've been talking about that for a long time. Cantor educator, Cantor ritual director.
Exactly.
I'll Cantor custodian.
Right. And the reason that I say it that way, and again, I think that the prognosticators of this, the better prognosticators by far, are both economists and also the deans of the schools, not me. But the reason why I think I can speak to this with like some degree of validity is I don't think, in fact, I know for certain not every cantor is either interested or cut out to do rabbinical pursuits. And I think it would be silly to think that the demand is the conflation of those two fields, right? And I think congregations and congregants also understand that.
Do you think that there's pushback from different factions of both professions, that the rabbis feel threatened, or they, maybe at a less enlightened shul, you would be brought on as cantor, but you have a rabbinic title, and maybe the senior rabbi would feel very, very threatened with that. And then similarly, do you think, you had mentioned like the older generation of cantors, do you think that they look at this as like, you're taking away something very special, what we have, and it's just, there's a weakening of either title?
I think that, well, I have two answers to that question. neither which actually answers your question. One is when I was going through my search
So
7 years
your
ago.
rabbinic training is complete because you
Yes,
answered that
you're
perfectly.
Fantastic.
basically at
Great.
my level right now. Of
Great.
she said
Yes.
nothing's going to answer
Any
the question.
level.
I mean, that's pretty much.
Nothing's going to answer. I don't know who's going to be mad about. I don't know who this either frustrates or angers on individual levels. I don't know what kind of politics this creates, because I think it's different for every for every congregation, every person. I think some people are
Absolutely
ready
true.
for this and some are not. But like two stories, or at least one, because I think I forgot one of them now that I laughed. But one story is that that happens a lot. But 7 years ago when I was going
Happens a
through
lot
the
here.
search, yeah, 7 years ago when I was going through the search, or 8 years ago when I was a student, um, I remember that going to I was going to a congregation in like kind of a suburban area for a rabbinic search. I was going to both CA and RA congregations at the same time. The CA search had started earlier, but I was going for an assistant rabbi position at a congregation where there was a CA cantor also there. And I remember, I think rather smartly, going into Nancy Abramson's office and I said, "Does the cantor know that they're bringing me
Yeah.
in for the assistant rabbi position
It's just
and that I'm a
it's a messy
cantor?"
situation.
Right. And she said, "I don't know, let's call them." And she called them and they really didn't know, right? I mean, they
Right.
knew, but they didn't know. And so she called and tried to mediate and prime and everything. And I realized then just how messy it was going to be for me if I was going to enter an environment where there were multiple clergy in the
Yeah.
shul and I would have to develop my relationships one by one with each clergy person. And I guess that's my answer. I think that was the other thing I was going to say is um, it really is about every relationship that you develop with an individual person and whether or not they are prepared to be threatened or not.
So Hillary, like what's next? I mean, you're very happy in your shul and God willing, you'll be there forever. But do you have like something perfect in mind, like that would you ever want to be the kolbo, the sole clergy ministering, serving a community of a certain size by yourself, and you get to just wear both hats seamlessly?
Launch. Yeah.
Right.
I
Where do
hope
you
I
see
get to
yourself
stay.
in 5 years?
I hope I get to stay exactly where I am. And the reason why I do and why I love what I do is like threefold. One is I love my relationship with my senior rabbi. And when the CA opens up its new website, and I hope people listening to this do check it out when it's a free
Cantors.org.
advertisement,
And
cantors.org, when it unveils, he's one of the first three testimonials. He actually asked if he could be one
that's
of the
right.
testimonials on
Yes.
the website.
Yes.
The relationship that he and I have developed over the past 7 years has been unbelievable.
It's a gift.
It
Yeah.
is a total gift. And it's not because we're both rabbis. It is a wonderful relationship. The second reason I hope that I get to stay, though, is because as much as I love it, and it may run out at some point, not being the ultimate decision maker, not being the Mara de Atra is where I am right now. I love that I have a great deal of autonomy and decision making power. I get to make a lot of decisions where I am, but I don't have to make the ultimate decisions on a lot. I mean, I have a multi-million dollar institution at my fingertips.
Oh, I thought you were going
And
to say contract.
Me too. I was like sitting like.
It's like
that would have
would
been
be
such a drop at the end of this podcast.
and I just signed a $72 million 5-year deal.
That's right.
I have to go catch my jet.
I'm sure.
No, I don't want to be the ultimate decider. Not right now. There may come a time, but I'm really, really, really happy to be exactly where I am on that. And the third is I'm exhausted as is.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled to
You
be in a
mentioned your
place.
2 little
where
kids
things are not-
before. I mean, you're pulled in a million directions.
Right.
You're in nature's perfect position for yourself right now, and you've struck
Right.
the perfect work-life balance, or I'm sure it's ever evolving, but you're
Yeah.
you have a very good situation, and you're doing just what you want to be doing and what you should be doing and what matches well with your personality.
Exactly. And thank God for the team that I'm doing it with because they've got my back.
Nice,
Wow.
nice. Well, Hillary, we want to thank you for taking time out
Yeah.
of your morning, especially with your kids,
Thank
going
you.
and they're wondering why the door's closed and the on-air light is on and they don't bother mom. But we want to thank you for giving us your time and being one of our few guest stars that we've had so far on our podcast. So thank you again for joining us. We want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom, a
Shalom.
restful, peaceful Shabbat, full of my new
Yucha.
catchphrases are wholeness and self-care. I think Penny and I spoke about New Year's resolutions recently, and
Yeah,
those are on the
mine was,
top of our list. And more wine.
of course.
So
More wine, of course.
so
Thank you
thank
for
you for
having
joining us
me.
this morning, Hillary, and we will hopefully see each other in person as
Amen.
soon as we
Next year
possibly
in
can.
Palm Springs at the very latest.
Absolutely.
Ezra
Be
Hashem.
well. So that was just enlightening. I was just left with this positive feeling that
She's amazing.
she's threading this needle so expertly.
I know.
It's like, I mean,
It's
she's,
crazy. Two schmoes like us. I can't believe it.
I,
Like, we're in
I'm,
the same company of her. I mean,
I'm depressed now. I mean, she's Rabbi Cantor. She's doing all these and we're just holding on with Cantor and doing the best we can.
yeah.
It's something that it's just wonderful and very encouraging to see.
Yeah.
All right. So Penny, that brings us to the end of yet another podcast episode. 2021 is off to a wonderful start.
Yes.
And yeah, well, except for, the other thing, but religiously 2021 is off to a wonderful start. So we would like to thank everyone for joining us and for being with us. And as we always say, that hopefully in not too long in the future, we will be able to meet in person, to walk into an actual bar,
I don't have to
to
make my own.
enjoy one or two or maybe more old fashions and get back to our roots, which are so important. In the meantime, and I'm really ashamed to be holding up this morning beverage cup, but I promise. But anyway, the next time we get together, as we always say,
The
the
drinks
drinks are on
on
us.
us.